Hey everybody, got another video here for you. Okay, it's time for a deep dive into the electronics of this thing. If you're not into electronics, just skip ahead. I'm going to be covering this in pretty great depth, right down to the point where you could implement it yourself just by watching this video, probably. So, here we go. At its most basic, it's 3 pickups connected in parallel to a jack. That's the electronics for the guitar. Now, since you have 3 pickups, you need some way to select, and so you just throw in an on off switch on each one. That way you can just turn on or off whatever you want, and whatever's turned on, you get those two or three in parallel. So that's at the most basic, and then you plug that into an EQ pedal, and the EQ pedal is on board the guitar, and that's the basic circuit right there. This is how it's got 3 pickups. This third one's a pair of piezos, but it's still just a pickup. It's got the signal wire coming out. You've got a way to select your voicing, and then you've got the onboard EQ is really no different than just taking the guitar and plugging it into an EQ pedal before you plug it into anything else. And that serves as your tone control. So, now, this pickup is actually a pair of piezos in parallel. And that's real simple. You just got 2 piezos like that. And each one's got a red wire coming off and a black wire coming off. And all you do is you hook them in parallel. And that's your output signal. Right there. You get your plus and your minus. And that's the way the piezos are wired up. So, that's this part of the circuit. That's that pickup, basically. For these 2 pickups, it's going to be interchangeable. And out of all the different kinds of pickups there are on the planet, you can have either 2, 3, 4, or 5 wires coming out of the thing. You got 2 for single coils. You got 3 for non-splittable active humbuckers or active single coils. You got 4 wires for splittable humbuckers, and they actually now make a splittable active humbucker, which I assume has 5 wires. But either way, you've got to have that 5th power wire for active pickup support. So, and you got to have 4 wires in order to do a splittable humbucker. So you need a 5-pin connector. And then 4 of those are going to be the 4 leads coming off of a humbucker. Your north, south, in and out, and that kind of, however you want to label them. What I'm doing is I'm saying, say like this is your guitar, like this. This is coil A and that's coil B, for whatever pickup you put in there, if it's splittable. A is the one towards the headstock end, and B is the one towards the bottom of the guitar. But it doesn't really matter how you label them, north, south, A, B, inner, outer, etc., etc. It's just, one versus the other. So, so you got a 5-pin JST coming off this thing that's roughly equivalent to the 4 wires coming off a humbucker, and then a power wire going for an active pickup. And then the bridge is actually the most complicated part of the circuit. So I'm going to do that next. So on the bridge, you get a JST connector kind of a thing, and you've got a power wire coming out, and you've got your 4 leads coming out. Let's call them humbucker leads, for lack of a better name. And this big fat red thing will be that's your power. So the first thing that it's going to go through is, I gotta find my right diagram here. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. Both the bridge and the neck are going to start by going through an AB both switch. And that's the one that the guys on Seymour Duncan turned me on to. And it's terribly clever. It works like this. So you have this is an on-off, on, single pole, 3-throw, SP triple throw. So it's got 3 connectors, and this one's in, I guess you would call it, and then you got out 1 and out 2. And when it's in the middle, the input's not connected to anything. And when you throw it one way or the other, it's connected to, the input is connected to one of the 2 output pins. And it's really clever the way it works. And this is how it works. So you got your switch, and you got your 3 pins. And then you got your pickup here. So you take your hot from your pickup and you put it to one of the outer pins. And you take your ground from your pickup and you put it to the other of the outer pins. And these are also going to be your outputs. So that's going to be your minus for your signal out. And this is going to be your plus for your signal out. At each stage of the point, you'll have a plus and a minus for signal coming in, and you'll do something, and then you'll have a plus and a minus for signal coming out. So it's like that, and then all you do is you take your coil splits. I'm running out of colors here, but green and, I don't know, thin black wire. That's all I got left, really. So these are your coil splits, and you stick them on the middle. And if you throw the switch one way, it shorts out one coil. And if you throw the switch the other way, it shorts out the other coil. And if you have it in the middle, it doesn't short out either, and you get a regular humbucker. Very, very clever. So that's your AB both switch. Well, it's actually, yeah, A both B kind of a thing. Or it might be B both A, and then you got to flip it around in the panel to get it to go the way you want. But so that's the first switch. And then for the bridge, the second switch is the phase. And that's the somewhat uglier one. And that's a phase switch right there. You use a double pole, double throw. What is this thing? On. Yeah, so it's a DP-DT on switch. And so you wire it up. It's got 6 pins. And let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, okay. This is going in plus. and this is input minus. So these would come from your AB both switch or your pickup or whatever. And then this is your minus out. This is your plus out. And then you got a crisscross stuff. Let's see. This guy goes around to this pin. And this guy goes around to this pin. And that's it. That's it. And that's the phase switch. So you've got your two inputs are going on your top two terminals, and they're also going crisscrossed over to your bottom two terminals. And then your two outputs come off of your two center terminals. You throw the switch one way and it's in phase, and you throw the switch the other way and it connects to the crisscross terminals instead and sends that as your output. And that's the phase switch, and that's the complicated one. So it's not really that bad. And it's also the more complicated switch itself, being a 6-pin instead of like a 3-pin. Okay, so the blast volume off, you've got a hot and a ground going in. And let's see here. Where am I at? There it is. Yeah, this basically only messes around with the hot wire signal. And so you've got another 3-way switch. It's a on, off, on. Same type is used as the AB both switch. And so, yeah, once again, the middle is your input, and then you got two outputs. And when the switch is in the middle, it's not connected to either of the outputs. And then you throw it one way or the other, and it connects to one of the other pins. So, what you do is you take your hot signal, and you're basically going to use this as almost like a switch on a railroad track. And you just send it to the middle. So when this is in the middle position, your hot's not connected to anything, and it basically turns off the guitar or that pickup or whatever this hot is. Okay, so yeah, in this case, this is going to be coming from either the bridge or the neck or the piezos, perhaps via a phase switch and a AB both switch. So you put your hot wire goes to the center, and then on one side, your output is going to be, remember this is all hot wire output, it's not playing with the ground. You're going to have two choices. One's going to be your blast, and the other's going to be your volume. So for your volume, you're going to go like this kind of a thing. That would be ground, and this would be your volume pot, if I do recall correctly. So you got hot on this side, you got ground on that side, and this is your positive output on your volume. And then on the blast side, it's just direct, like that. And then this would be your plus out to the jack or whatever. And you're not messing with the minus side at all. Except to connect it to that ground there. So, yeah. You could go like that. If you want to draw the diagram that way, that's another way to draw it. So that is your off blast volume switch and volume pot right there. And then from there, on this guitar, it then goes to the equalizer, or you could just go to a jack or whatever. Okay, now for the neck. For the neck, it's the same as the bridge without the phase. That's all there is to it. So that takes care of the neck. Now, for the twin parallel piezos, I showed you how the piezos themselves are wired up to create the pickup portion, but I didn't show you the rest of the circuit. For the twin parallel piezos, it's the same as the bridge without the AB both switch and without the phase. It just has the blast volume off switch. So that's it for the piezos, which means that's it for all the complicated electronics in the guitar. So you now got something that looks kind of like this, where you've got your neck going through your AB and your blast, and you got your bridge going through your AB and your phase and your blast, and you got your piezos going through your blast. And then all you do is you just bring all three together and send them into the EQ, and then there's a jack on the other side, and that's it for the whole guitar. And that's it for the in-depth dive of the electronics system. And now it's time to finish wiring it all up. One more thing to mention, the pots I'll be using are 1 meg audio taper pots. I'm using 1 megs in order to reduce the treble bleed when you don't have the blast on. Odds are that you would be, well, no, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it's like, the only reason you would not be in blast mode if you're using a given pickup would be if you specifically wanted to attenuate it some using the volume. Say like you were blending pickups and you wanted to do the Gibson blending thing with the volume knobs, which is basically what they're for. It's also the way they behave too. If you have like all three switched on, you turn any of them all the way down, the whole guitar will go dead. So that's the downside of blend knob volumes. But yeah, basically the only reason to not have it in blast is if you want to do the blending thing. So, and it's going to have 1 megs to reduce the treble bleed when you are doing the blending thing. And I'm not exactly sure what kind of effect like a 1 meg versus 500 versus 250 is going to have on like how touchy the volume controls will be, but I guess I'll find out. So getting ready to wire up the AB both switch here for the bridge and checking out the new soldering irons. And the first one actually didn't work, but this one seems to be working fine, so I'm going to continue on with this unit. Okay, so this is an AB both switch hooked up, and as you can see, It's the 3 prongs, and you got the hot going to one side and the ground on the other, and your splits go to the middle. And then this is the output. It's these 2 wires here. And now we've got to tackle a phase switch. So working on the phase switch here, and it's going just fine actually. Just wanted to say that this high-powered, high-temperature, high wattage, or higher wattage adjustable one is definitely making life easier. Now that I've got one that works, yeah. So yeah, it's definitely making life easier. If you don't have one, or if you're thinking about picking something up in that type of a tool, I definitely recommend the higher power adjustable temperature type. And there it is, one phase switch coming off of the A both B and coming into the phase, and then there's your output right there. So yeah, that's what it looks like in real life. As you can see, it's got the little crisscross thing going across here, and then your outputs come from the middle. And basically the way it works is when it's thrown in one direction, it's connecting this red one to that red one, and this black one to that black one, and you throw it the other way, it uses these cross wires, and so black gets connected to red, and red gets connected to black, and it flips the pickup out of phase with the neck pickup. And flipping the bridge and the neck pickup, what that does is it causes the output waves of each one to superimpose, but they're flipped. So it's only places where you have big differences between a neck and a bridge pickup's output tone that you're going to hear output between the two when it's phased. That's the reason why phase sounds, first it sounds weird, and second it's not that loud, which is yet another case for having a good amp with lots of headroom so that you can hear these more subtle tones that guitars are possible of making. Slight correction on a volume. If you're looking at it this way, the left lug is ground, and the right lug is hot, because your output's in the middle. So if you crank it all the way up to the right, you want your sweep arm to be over at this lug here. So this is your hot lug, and when you turn it to the left to turn it all the way down, that's your ground lug. So that's backwards. Okay, so here's the blast off blend switch here. It's basically just messing with the hot wire side. The hot wire's coming into the middle, and then one side's going to go off to the jack or the EQ, and the other one's going to go off to the volume pot. And then there's the negative side there that's coming from the previous switch, or this hot, and this negative could be coming from your pickup or whatever. Okay, and here's the volume pot. You've got your hots coming in from your blast switch, and that's the yellow lead. And then this is the ground coming from even upstream of the blast switch. That's the ground output from the phase, actually. But yeah, this is the ground from upstream, whatever's upstream. And both it and the ground output are connected to the third terminal. And the middle terminal is your output, your hot, that gets varied by the potentiometer. And that's all there is to it. And so these guys then go to the jack. And then this here is the hot wire from the blast switch right here. And that gets hooked in with this one and goes to the positive side of the jack as well. And then you're basically going to have the same kind of hookup coming off of the piezos and the neck, and all the positives get tied together, all the negatives get tied together, then it goes to a 1/4-inch mono plug that plugs into the side of the EQ. And then the 1/4-inch jack on the output side of the EQ is the output jack for the guitar. Yeah, so this is the entire bridge wiring harness. You got your JST connector, you've got your AB both switch, you've got your phase, you've got your blast, and you've got your volume, and you've got your output, and you've got your power for your active pickups. And then the neck wiring harness will be the same, but it won't have the phase switch. And then the piezo wiring harness will be the same, but it won't have the AB both switch, and it won't have the phase switch. It'll just have the blast and the volume. And there's the complete neck wiring harness. It's got the JST and the power cord, extension, and that's the that's the AB both switch. And then over here is the blast switch, going to the volume. And then this one here is your output from the volume and the blast. That's your positive, and this is your negative, and these would go to your jack, or in the case of this guitar, it's going to the equalizer. And that's the last one. This is the wiring harness for the piezos. The hot for the piezo will go to the middle terminal on this switch, and the grounds from the piezo connects with this ground coming off of the pot. And the output for the piezo wiring harness, this is the ground and this is the hot. And so yeah, this is the simplest of the 3 wiring harnesses. And now basically all the hots from all 3 harnesses and all the grounds from all 3 harnesses all get tied together to a 1/4-inch mono cable with a 90-degree plug on it, and they'll run through a hole from inside the cavity up through the control plate and then into the side of the equalizer. And so I'm going to have to, as I recall, the way you have to do it, or the best way to do it really, is to put the plug in, you cut it to length and strip it, and then you put it into the equalizer, and then you mount the hole, you drill the hole, and you mount the whole thing in. You stick the cord through and glue the EQ on, and then everything's good to go in order to wire all this junk on this side up to the end of the cable on the mono plug. But the downside of that is that you gotta take the EQ off in order to unplug it, which, I don't know, there's not really a need to unplug it. So, if you're having to service the unit for some reason, I think that would be okay. You could just unsolder stuff at the other end of the cable and not have to pop off the EQ and then re-glue it or something like that. Yeah, I think at this point I can go ahead and take this harness and wire the EQs up to it and pop it in, and then go ahead and pop in the other 2 harnesses. I'm thinking that I in order to get all those wires to lay down in that channel so that I can get a cover plate over it cleanly, it might be a good idea to lay a little bit of hot glue in order to help hold things down in place while I put the cover on it. Because I don't want, I need the cover to sit flat for the swing bar. So, but at this point I'm like rambling about stuff I'm thinking ahead about, so let me go ahead and get this thing hooked up. Okay, the piezo wire harness is connected, starting up here at the piezos, which are connected in parallel, one there, and hot in the ground wire signal coming off, and they go in to the blast and the volume, and that's your hot and your ground output. This really should be closer, shouldn't it? Yeah, so piezos coming out on these guys, going through your blast and your volume, and these are your two outputs. That's your hot, that's your ground. These guys get your jack, or in the case of this guitar, they're going to get hooked up in parallel with the other two pickups, and all go to the EQ. You know, I never really tried hot glue versus CA glue for securing wires, but it actually seems to work good. And it's not, see, the issue with the CA glue, like before I went to the channels, I was doing the pins around the outside kind of a thing. And before I was doing the pins around the outside, I was doing CA glue around the outside. But with the CA glue, when you tried to take it apart, it would tear up the wiring. But I mean, it's like I just glued this and no fears. You know, I can just pull this thing right back off. Come here. There we go. Boom. See? And I haven't damaged it at all. And I can just put a little heat on that and plop it right back in. So this actually might be an easier way, not necessarily a more cosmetic way, but it might be an easier way to route wiring than all this routing stuff. I mean, you take a look at the barrel tuner here. Let's see if I can get some more light. Oh, maybe not. How about this way? A little more light. Yeah, so you take a look at the barrel tuner here, and it's got the cables running down the side, and it doesn't look that bad. It's got even more on this side. So yeah, it doesn't look that bad. So that's another option. Instead of using like these pins bent over as like wire retainers, yeah, hot glue might work. So, finally broke down and got a real amp for the shop and a real metal pedal. It's a Fender Champ 100. It's a 100-watt chip amp, 2x12 cab combo, and that's a Boss Metal Zone Waza pedal right there. And let me tell you, it makes a big difference. Here's the deal. I used to have a Crate CR160 driving a Marshall 4x12, and yeah, I was spoiled. I had real gear, and it sounded real good, and I was motivated to play. And I had that amp for like 30 years. And then it died, and I had bullshit, basically, pardon my French. You know, I'd get like, you know, a Fender Frontman 40, but it wouldn't be enough. And so I just lost motivation to play, really, to tell you the truth. And then finally, I'd been humming and hawing about it for a long time because I just was really not pleased with the results I was getting out of the amps I had about at hand. And so I decided that if I was going to do the builds justice, you know, a build's never going to sound any better than the gear you're running it through. So I decided to get a real amp in order to make sure so that I could really see what my guitar sounded like. And I was playing the X-15 Diamond on it first last night, and oh my God, with the metal pedal, and yeah, I got it pretty well dialed in. This is an awfully small space for an amp this loud, and for my particular tone, which is like kind of bright but metal and heavy, and with feedback, it's really difficult to get it balanced and at the volume that I like with this small a space. So I might need a little bit more equalization control, but I'm starting to get it dialed in. I mean, once you've got like an EQ, plus there's an EQ on the metal pedal, plus there's, you know, basically an EQ on the amp, you're stacking 3 EQs, and it takes a little tweaking in order to get everything dialed in and figure out, okay, well, this is a 2-band EQ, and this is around 500 hertz, and this is around 4K or whatever. Because it's not like they label these things, so. And then you got to start mixing and matching, because they all add up along the chain, and that's what comes out the speaker. So it takes some tweaking in order to actually get things dialed in. But yeah, and it's the whole point of why I'm rambling on here is that your guitar's never going to sound any better than the gear that you're running it through. And so, yeah, cheap guitar, good amp. I think I'd have to vote, you know, cheap guitar and good amp, and then get some nice pickups and put them in the guitar is the route I'd probably take. One thing, I mean, with this thing now, I noticed that those quad rails on the that I use on a lot of the builds, they're rather microphonic, or at least the Diamond is microphonic, but that might be the guitar itself. I mean, it's all torrefied wooden stuff, so, because it's got that Shoshone band finish on it. But yeah, I mean, like right now, I'm on totally clean. Bass is about 4 and trebles at about 4. Yeah, so they're both just a tad below 12 o'clock, and I'm running totally clean, no effects, no cab mods, you know, simulations or anything, none of that. And this is at like, I don't know, 1 volume, 1.5. Where is this? No, that's about 3. And I'm playing the Esquire of all things. But yeah, I mean, it's sounding great. Alright, I'm going to shoot this again. I'm talking way too much. So, got a real amp and a real metal pedal for the shop, and makes a heck of a difference. And yeah, I'm actually motivated to play again. So, do yourself a favor and get yourself decent gear, and it'll help with your motivation levels. Sustain anyone? Intonation. Okay, just about there. I've got all these guys hot glued in to the channel so they're all nice and flush, and I can get that back cover plate on with no problem. And I've got all the controls are all bolted in, and all the wiring's been moved around as necessary, so nothing's touching, and everything looks good. On the cover plate, there is some concern with clearance with these switches here on the outside, so I plan to use some electrical tape over top of the copper so that it's both shielded and insulated from shorting out against any of the switches inside. And it's time for the great gathering of like all the positives and all the negatives, wherever they are. There's my bridge ground. So still got to strip that one. But yeah, it's time for the great gathering. These are the leads off the equalizer. I lengthened them a little bit in order to make the great gathering a little bit easier. And yeah, so now basically everything's all going to come together. But I have a little delay of game because the kill button right here, the plastic ones, they were too stiff on the spring and had kind of a click action to them too, almost, actually. And yeah, so they simply weren't suitable to task. So I went ahead and ordered up some red ones that are metal and should match this pretty close for the shade of red. And I also went fishing for knobs and was unable to come up with 3 identical in any color. And so I went ahead and ordered up knobs for it as well. Once again, metal knobs in a red that should match this. So trying to keep it, you know, in the theme. It's a red guitar and it's got red accents on the hardware. Then let's see. So yeah, I can't actually do the great gathering of all the positive and negatives yet until I get this last wire laid into the channel. So those parts are coming in like today or tomorrow. So until then, I've been doing what I can, getting the pots and switches actually screwed and bolted. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this video. So until the next one, everybody, have a good one.